Wow, took a little bit, hit the button, just sat there for about 3 seconds. Anyway, everybody, it's April 12th. We're right in the middle of April already. 2 days until the anniversary of the Titanic sinking. Or 6 days left to get your tax return done. And I'm sure we can come up with a bunch of other reasons, anniversaries, other deadlines we have to think about in April. But at any rate, today we have Adrian giving us a presentation on estate planning and your vintage electronics, very much centered on that. So we're going to be while we're all in denial here, time marches on and we can't be in denial that maybe we actually have to think about this. So I think this will be a valuable presentation. But before we start, we'll start with the usual, any events or things like that. I know that Ken does, but before we hand it off to him, is there anyone else that has anything they want to?
I've got one.
Sure.
This Saturday, April 15th, there's a Hamfest local to me in Moultonboro, New Hampshire, which is next to Tuftonboro, the next town west of Tuftonboro. And so it's from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you want details, you can go to w1bst.org. That's Whiskey 1 Bravo Sierra Tango.org.
Great. Thank you, Larry. For anyone in that area, there's an event right around the corner. Any other?
I have
Larry,
one
you know
too.
anything about how big it is, or?
It's a small fest, but your first seller's table is free while they last.
I have one down here in Connecticut that might be of interest.
By all means. What's going on, Gary?
It's at the it's Saturday the 15th at the Vintage Radio and Communications Museum of Connecticut in Windsor, Connecticut. 115 Pearson Lane, probably about 8 to noon or 1, I'm not sure. Sellers have been getting there very early, like 6:30 to 7, I think. But anyway, it's on the smaller side, but it's a good one. And I think being the first outdoor one, and it looks like the forecast for Saturday is going to be pretty good. I think they should have a good turnout.
That's
Hey,
good to know.
Gary, I don't see the Center Electronics 100V.
Oh, I moved it over to the shelf next to the other 100V.
Okay.
And I'd like to remind everybody of the MIT show coming up on Sunday. It's a big one, and it's the first one of the season, so it'll be very big. Free parking, and if you look up Flea at MIT, there'll be 200 dealers there, I would say, with at least 25 of them with old radio equipment, a lot of computer stuff, of course, and some nutcase has an Enigma machine that he brings regularly. Don't pay any attention to him.
He shows up all over the place.
Whatever he says is indecipherable.
If I
Boom.
If I could
It's
have
not there. It's
another minute or two, I'd just like to show you the latest acquisition here. It's a absolutely never seen before Civil War pocket spy telegraph set that I came across recently. And as you can see, it has 2 big coils, and these coils are connected. One of them, you take the lead and hook it to your bayonet and jam it into the ground. The other lead goes to the other terminal on the front here, and you throw that, put a wire on it, throw it up over the enemy telegraph lines. Telegraph lines were not insulated in those days. So once you did that, the sounder, which you see in the back there, will start clicking. And if you got a good, if you got a good fist, you can use that little key in the front to send false messages, false news to the enemy. Let me show you a couple of more shots at it because this is not a typical one. I've seen a lot and had a lot of typical ones, but this one was made by Chubbuck, and it's a very, very, very early Civil War manufacturer. Here's another view of the telegraph key, and a little bit of a view of the sounder. You can see the armature that flips back and forth horizontally there when the signal comes in. And just a few other pictures of it. The coils, surprisingly enough, even though they're 150 years old, still show 10 ohms, and the sounder works, which is pretty darn amazing. And there's a close-up showing the name. I don't know how he managed to engrave the name on that key because it's absolutely, absolutely tiny. And here's the underside of it, not quite as pretty, but you can see somebody wrapped little pieces of paper around the wires because the insulation had gone away. Anyway, I thought you'd like to see that guy. I'm very excited about it, and it's very unusual.
That is,
Tom,
how
what
did you acquire it?
As you talked about that, heard me, I've never heard what a sounder sounds like.
Well, this one doesn't sound much like a sounder. It's got a very small armature, but it goes click when you receive a signal, and clack when you let go, or when the signal goes off. I've had a sounder working at the NEVAC meets a number of times, and if you remind me, I'll bring one for the next meet. And people like to listen to it and see if they can copy along. I have a little device that shows the letters that it's clicking out.
Now, how did you
So-
acquire this, Tom?
I have one. Hello?
Hello?
Hi,
Yeah.
John.
Right.
We have a book sale going on in West Lebanon, New Hampshire,
Oh, right.
very close to the intersection of 91 and I-89. And what used to be the store in the shopping plaza, it's the first thing you'd see after you got off either highway. And we have had quite a few thousand books, of which there are some reprints of Lindsay publications, Crystal Radio bulletins, a bunch of things there. The shore becomes a half-price shore on this coming Sunday. But in the meantime, if you're short of reading material, I think you can do very well there.
I was in the second group of people going in the door there, of course, and there were some nice old radio books. And if you do go, the science and radio and engineering stuff is on the right side of the huge, huge room, about 3/4 of the way down.
I had Tom, I had a question about your Civil War system, and that is, did they ever notice that there was current going to ground? In other words, I was thinking that somehow they would notice that there's more current being drawn than they thought, on the intercepting. I just wondered.
They weren't very sophisticated in measuring the electrical voltages. Then by World War I, they started measuring those things and learned that they could copy the enemy signals that were going through the ground. But back in the Civil War, it was really the beginning of the technology, so they didn't have a clue. And ground was serving as an extremely good conductor. I've always been amazed by that.
Yeah.
You get a copper wire up in the air, and then you just jam your bayonet into the ground, and doesn't really matter how far away. It just boggles my mind because I think of the ground as a big resistor, but apparently it doesn't work that way. And you can jam your bayonet half a mile away from someone else and the other bayonet and still get a current flowing from those two bayonets through the ground.
Yeah, I guess they didn't run their system in sort of the way they eventually did, of having everything in series, where you had to close that little key switch to make sure that the line kept going.
Yeah, no, this was definitely before that.
Just a comment though about about old stuff. I don't know how many of you have read this book called The Victorian Internet. It's a really interesting thing about telegraphy, and it's also the interesting thing about it is all the scams, fake news, and everything else that we've got on the internet existed sort of in 1870. Same things.
Yeah, it's a cute book, a little bit oversimplified from my standpoint. I could have used a little more technology in there, but it was really meant to show the similarity between the telegraph networks and what we now consider the World Wide Web, and it does a good job of that.
I got an announcement.
Sure, go ahead. Len.
July 22nd at the New England Wireless and Steam Museum, we're having a tune-up. You can sell stuff there if you want. The vendors are $25. That includes 2 adult admissions. You gotta bring your own table, or you can rent them for $10. We don't have very many tables. But there's a big field where you can tailgate. It's all free parking. And then walk-in admission is $15, $7 for child, 6 to 17, and under 6 is free.
What was the date again of that?
July 22nd from 9 to 3.
And if you haven't been to that museum, it's an absolute must. It has incredible collection of wireless equipment and, of course, steam engines.
So, and that admission price for the table includes viewing the museum. That's not extra.
Great, good to know. Thank you, Len. Ken, I know that you had wanted to give some announcement on a ham event.
Yeah, okay. If I could share my screen, just so
Of
I'm
course.
gonna talk to.
Absolutely.
All right, hang on, let me see if I can find the right one here. I think it's this one. So I won't take a lot of time, but you all see that screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good to see you. See you. Great.
All right, so somebody had brought up Skip Youngberg, I guess, actually might be a member of this group, but he is looking for speakers, and I can talk to that in a moment. Just a little bit of history about the Ham Expo. You know, we could trace our lineage all the way back to 1958 when it was started by Gene Hastings, W1VRK. He actually, the first convention was actually a ham fest at it was an all-day picnic and flea market at Norenberger Park in Boston. There's a big hotel there now. In '60, it moved to the New Ocean House Hotel in Swampscott. Some of you guys might remember that. And they had it there for a couple of years. It was typically in April, but then they moved it to the fall because the spring rains would screw it up every year. It got pretty big, and they had 2 national ARL conventions in Boston, down at the Sheraton in Boston in 1966 and 1970. At one point in the 60s, the attendance was over 3,000. It was actually larger than Dayton at the time. In 69, just 2 weeks prior to the date of the convention, the New Ocean House burned down. Any of you guys remember that? No? So they basically moved it in 2 weeks' time to a hotel in Boston. They actually got coverage from local Boston TV and radio. It was one of their better attended shows. 73, they tried it down on the Cape. It was a disaster. They were back in Boston in 76. Finally, in 78, they moved it to Boxborough. And of course, we were on a 2-year, every 2 years type of schedule. So starting in 78, we were in Boxborough. We were there till 2019. We switched to a 1-year schedule starting in 2018 because the vendors were complaining they didn't like the 2-year schedule. I've been involved since, as an attendee, probably since '88, and then I had a minor role in '94. By '96, I was roped in, and I've been heavily involved with the convention since 1996, doing various things. Prize chairman was probably the funnest role I had, passing out gifts all weekend long. I've also done the program. And now I am currently the flea market chair. So I know some of you guys because you always buy my spots, and that's a good thing. So as mentioned, we are looking at really going into strong, high planning mode at this point. Just want you to understand the organization behind it is called FEMARA, right? That's the Federation of Eastern Mass Amateur Radio Associations. That is a 501c3 organization. So any profits that we make from the event get plowed into the FEMARA scholarship at the ARRO Foundation. The end of June 2022, the last report that was published by the league, we had over $170,000 endowment there. And that's basically targeted for hams in the New England area. They can be going to either a college or a technical school. Basically we've contributed a lot to the youth in this area through the convention. It's actually one of the larger endowments, doesn't stand up to the ARDC folks who just recently came on board, but it is one of the larger ones that you can see there. As you can see, our event this year, in 2019, was our last year in Boxborough. They started to price themselves out of the market. I don't know if they didn't want us there or whatnot. They wouldn't negotiate with us. So we said, all right, we're moving. So we've moved down to the Marlboro, Sonesta Hotel down there. We like that place because it does have potential for expansion because they are associated with that trade center that's right below the hotel. And, we really are working to try to grow this to be able to have to, warrant using that trade center. As you can imagine, you guys have been involved with finding venues for your events and stuff like that. It's really, really hard. But those folks down in Marlboro have been very accommodating. And in fact, the first year we were supposed to hold it was the COVID year, and we had to put everything on hold. And the hotel worked with us, didn't charge us any fees or anything like that. And basically, we got the show rolling in 2021. So that's kind of where we're at. It's coming up again, August 25th and 27th. You'll start to see more and more announcements through your normal, channels, social media channels and stuff like that. As Skip indicated, we actually have traditionally the program fell on one guy for the most part. He's now got a team of guys, including Skip. Phil Temples is head of the programs, and we really are trying to find some fresh talks, some new talks and things like that. And we did have a request from the community for more talks about restoring old rays and those types of things. That's why we reached out to you. So, as a speaker, you get close-in parking. There's a speaker reserve parking area close to the entrance of the hotel, and you also get free admission. There are other volunteer opportunities throughout the event. I'm actually also responsible for the W1A station. The guys that have been running my W1A station the past 2 or 3 years have bowed out, so I'm looking for a guy or two to run that. If you're involved with something at that level where you've got set up and tear down and those types of things, not only do you get admission, but you get a room at the hotel overnight gratis. So again, the more involvement you have, the better, the bigger the benefits. As I said, I am a flea market chair. I'll see Tom out there in the flea market with his setup, most likely. I'll be around. I'm also running the DX dinner. We started a DX dinner in 2002. We try to bring in interesting folks who have gone to interesting places. With COVID, that really made it difficult in the past few years, but we got a bunch of things on tap for this year that we're going to try to bring in. So that's pretty much the status of the event at this point. Like I said, we're just going into our heavy, planning and rollout phase. Any questions at this point?
Well, I'd just like to add that I'm going to be giving a talk there on the 25th, the afternoon, on disappearing wireless history with a lot of examples and stuff. And I'm going to be giving the talk along with Mr. Mike who many of you know from the from the Near Fest. And I think it'll be fun for people who are interested in antique radio and the history of radio to come and do that. And so just one little added incentive. The flea market is world-class and the talks are wonderful last year, and they will be again.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. And I'll see you there. Okay,
All right. Well, thank you, Ken. This is
Yep.
very useful for people to look forward to in the late summer. But mark your calendars accordingly. So I think what we'll do next is I'm going to just jockey our agenda just very slightly. Normally I do that, what have you bought, or or what you're looking for, or some prompts to pose. What I'm going to do is going to have Adrian give his presentation first, and then I'm going to use the balance of the time for the, hey, what'd you get? Or I know Per had some solicit some feedback from some of us. So Per, would you be good in about 30 or 40 minutes to pick that up after Adrian's presentation?
That'll be fine.
Great. I think what we'll do,
Okay.
Adrian, is I think I'm going to hand off to you to cover the primary reason for our meeting, and then we'll cover the balance between any other photos, and of course, member time attendee time to talk about whatever is on their mind, including any show or pose or whatever. So without further ado, Adrian, I really thank you for putting this together and look forward to what you're about to say.
Okay, so everybody charge your eyeballs, because I'm going to try and run through this fairly quickly. But in talking to John, we will either issue this presentation to everybody by email, or it will be on the NEVEC site. So don't worry if you miss a few words. The real key is when I start it, you'll understand. So just hanging out. Okay. So the major title, Estate Planning for Collectors of Model Railroads, Amateur Radio, Vintage Electronics, or basically anything that can be collected. The title and the presentation are applicable to any hobby where items are collected. Examples include stamp collection, model vehicles, model planes, etc., and etc. onward. All right. I won't, there we go. Typical audience and an overview. Collectors who have lost interest or are unable to continue and want to dispose of their collected assets. Also applies to the estate executor who doesn't know much about the particular hobby or collection. This clinic is not legal advice. Talk to your lawyer. This clinic is not tax advice. Talk to your accountant or financial advisor. Major topics are priorities, values, high value items, instructions, selling scenarios, fees, and professional services. Sorry. Oh, something's, my up button is not working. Okay. All right. The clinic presents advice on disposal of collected assets, whatever they are. Reason being, modeler, collector no longer interested or able. It may be part of an estate planning. It will be useful to the estate executor, but not the primary audience. The clinic addresses tangible assets accumulated during enjoyment of a hobby by the typical modeler collector. Modeler collectors who have accumulated a valuable collection will find value in this clinic, but they are not the principal audience. A related article is about trains, but it's called Pulling the Plug by Tony Costa. Can be found in Model Railroad of May 2016. The article is applicable to many hobby collections. There are also collection and protection estate planning companies. Fox Valley happens to be for railroads, but there are others. What's it worth? First thoughts. Temper expectations by thinking of the collected items as used items. Enthusiastic collectors may overestimate the cash value of their collections. Families and survivors may assign inflated values, perhaps based on the collector's enthusiasm. Remember that most collected items devalue like a new car. They depreciate as soon as you take possession. Except that the value of removable collected items, amateur radio, telescopes, computers, model railroad equipment, is primarily determined by supply and demand. And here I would just mention that the Tom's Enigma machines are one of the unusual type of products that only increase in value. Just regular collected items, and many things don't. The marketplace determines the value. It takes an organized effort to determine selling prices. You could use eBay or dealers and other experts. Hold on, I have to, some reason or other, all the little pictures are shifting around. Okay. All right, disassembly may be an expense. You must always remember that. Railroad layouts, ham shacks are all built to provide the space for the hobby. Antenna cabling, power supplies, additional outlets. The collectibles may have required environmental control, specialized handling equipment, specialized storage shelves, boxes, and stands. Although a great deal of skill went into the construction of the specialized storage system, containers, benches, and shelvings, items often have a negative residual value. In other words, you can't really sell them anywhere. Considerable effort is required to disassemble benches, fixtures, antennas, cabling, specialized chests or drawer units, train layouts, etc. Restoration of the space for family use or sale of the property is often required or a major key in trying to get rid of a collection. Remember, most of us will probably not get rid of the collection until, like, my wife will send a big truck to drag everything out and take it off to the dumpster, the dump. But so remember, it's going to cost you to take things apart. Unattached items, really the collection, anything that is removable from the room, shed, or garage without breaking walls, frames, and doors. These items may have financial value. Sort of things, locomotives, rolling stock, buildings, lights, track, electronic components in the model railroad area, heaters, air conditioners, environmental cabinets, shelving, benches, display cases, display shelving, display stands, unused albums, printing paper, ribbon, and cloth. I forgot to put in here that people who go a lot to ham fairs and NEVAC fairs and so on around the country have special cases or things in their car to put the objects in. I know Tom does. These must be counted in what you're going to put into your estate too, if they are of high value. Related items could be books, magazine sets, instruction manuals, photos, framed prints, miscellaneous items, hats, belts, buckles, lanterns, etc. It's just typical examples. Will or instructions for the executor can simplify legal and personal aspects of settling your estate. Instructions to executor has no real legal authority in most jurisdictions. Communicate important information to your executor. You may designate a separate executor for the model railroad, amateur gear, photographics, or antique radios. A separate letter of instruction for each type of railroads, antennas, power panels, etc. A separate executor could be one of your hobby friends or other subject matter expert. Remember, they only have to be knowledgeable of what you have, read or see, look at the photographs, and provide that information to the family or the legal executor. The information may include lists of items and desired recipients, description of executors' compensation, names of people who have first shot at purchasing your collection, a list of items that have little or no monetary value. Get organized. Physically organize and label all your stuff, kits, supplies, parts, tools. Make an inventory. Digital is more convenient. It's easily updated and duplicated. It could be a list, a spreadsheet, a database, or a dedicated program for collecting. Determine the market value. Include stuff, kits, supplies, parts, and tools. Leave copies of these lists with friends or relatives or in the cloud. Digital pictures are easy to take and include in the inventory. Inventory also has very useful for insurance purposes. Make sure the inventory is accessible to the executor. Inventory should provide help in identifying items, level of detail appropriate to the executor or the person handling the estate's familiarity. It's no good trying to have, a lawyer that knows about antique pots and you're trying to come to understand what an Enigma machine is. List what's borrowed and what's lent out. People always forget that. What have you lent out and is still out? Potential high value items. Prices based on their collectible value. Condition is important. Having original boxes in good condition and associated paperwork drives up the value. If you have high value items, check the internet for a dealer or a club in your area. Potential valuable items include the following examples. Marklin European model trains made in Germany, not China. Model steam engines, clocks, early telephone units, systems, early Morse keys, early amateur radio items, transmitters, receivers, watt meters, military instruments, and communication systems. Rare items in good condition with boxes can have high value. Used equipment without boxes has little value unless it's a large collection, say 50 pieces or more. Some hardbound railroad picture books from 1800s in good condition stored in a non-smoking home can have high worth. Early copies of World Radio Book, electrical engineering books from the 1800s. And it goes on a bit, brass models and so on. Years ago, all these items were the finest models available. Investment value may be disappearing. The market probably peaked 10 years ago. Older pieces with poor drive mechanisms, that's trains, are not worth a lot. The best engines or the best Enigma machines or the best this or that can be worth a lot of money. More mundane items may go for lower hundreds or less. All these models we're talking about, whether they be a radio or transistor radio or a train, came in nice boxes with liners, Value is much less without the boxes. Items previously available only in brass, reissued in plastic. This would apply to model ships, model trains, anything in that area. And in the case of trains, there's a few kits or structures that become collectibles and can be worth a lot. But that can also apply to any other item you're collecting. It has an area where there are specific parts of it that are of great value. Some with great value if you've got the box, etc. So that's just a lesson of what we're talking about. In the case of trains, electrical control, power tools, train control systems, electronics, including DCC systems, specialized modeling tools, all have value. But that's just an example of one particular hobby of the many, many that this group on the screen here and on the NEVAC list have. Disposal approaches, an overview, sell or give away. This is where you use the inventory and the current data, value data. Unless the collection includes unique and rare items, the collection will often not be worth the original purchase price. Are the anticipated proceeds worth the effort? Selling yourself may get the most dollars, but require much effort. Is the collection viewed as an asset in a will or as a tax asset? Alternative selling strategies: sell the collection to a dealer or broker or consignment, or sell it yourself. Donate, 501c3 tax deductible organization. Value assessment needed to substantiate tax deduction. You would already have, you have photographs, you have boxes, you have whatever it is I spoke of. And donating it to individuals with no tax credit. Check current tax law for deductions. Understand sellers. The seller may be a volunteer or a professional. Selling involves effort and expenses. You may need to ship a collection to a seller for assessment and resale. Careful packing and shipping, very time consuming and expensive. Carrying inventory, advertising, printing lists, cleaning and repairing, paying auction and credit card fees, packing and shipping, etc. A business will want to be compensated. A volunteer might not. Make sure you understand how the seller is compensated. Buy all or part of the collection for a negotiated wholesale price. Charge assessment fee plus percentage of sale. Most sellers are reputable, but checking is advisable. When you sell the collection yourself, effort required to determine the market value. What are similar items selling for on eBay? Be sure of the item identification. Many items look the same. On eBay, watch bids, watch these items to see if they do sell and at what price. Determine cost for selected method of selling: advertising, printing, lists, cleaning, repairing, auction fees, credit card fees, packing and shipping. Ensure the physical security of a collection, i.e. it remains in a dry, temperature-controlled environment. Selling the collection. Publicity. Distribute a list of sale items by email or on groups or websites. Advertise in NAMRA division newsletters, NEVAC website, ARRL sources, physical sale held at a certain place at a certain time. Tom's house, 1 o'clock Sunday. Okay. Fixed price or auction, auctioneer or silent. Virtual web marketplace, eBay, Craigslist, fixed price or auction. Will require considerable time and energy. Must research market prices, photograph and describe the items deal with the auctions, and pack and ship the equipment when sold. Companies can do this all for you for a fee or percentage. Model train show, swap meet, ham fair, or white elephant sale may be fees for tables or percentage of selling price. Need to research the market to set selling price. Spend the time at a train show or a ham fair selling the equipment. Schlep to and from. You probably won't sell everything at once. A table, a comparative table here. Auction company. Speed is fast, effort low. Dollars could be lower. Estate purchase companies, fast, low, higher cost. eBay, moderate, medium high, and medium cost. Consignment, slow, speed, low effort, medium dollars. Flea markets, slow speed, high effort, medium dollar return. Okay, this is applicable to model trains, except I do have the ARRL here. And no local amateur radio club, flea markets, or ham fairs. Okay, so there's various places. If you are selling a train collection, all the information's here. For other places, you have to research where you can sell. Okay, I have these were voices of experience, people that wrote in to the chap that wrote the original train lecture. Have a decent inventory listing, especially of the expensive stuff. Modelers should arrange for someone to help heirs deal with the collection. Leave instruction to heirs about objectives when selling collection. How much they care about the top dollar or just happy to get it to a good home. Don't want heirs stressing over what to do. Some heirs mistakenly or correctly think their loved one would hate to see the collection broken up or sold cheap and fast, rather than have them in a loving home. Some heirs get wound up in getting full value and push too far with buyers. Don't realize how much work it can be to sell collection. Don't realize it can be a real crapshoot on what you can get for model trains at any one time or antique radios. Executors should realistically estimate return on time. Number 2, unfair to stick adult children or surviving spouse to a disposal process. Can be less or more painful than expected. It started with items that I will never run again. So like in your own collection, I want to get rid of those. I will keep most of my favorites as long as I can. eBay has made selling easier. Listing 2 or 3 items for 10 days, and if they don't sell, etc. I start bidding at approximate price people are willing to pay. My price is firm until I change it, and I don't go below what I feel is a fair value for my computerized bidding history lists. I'm taking my time selling just as I did when I was buying. At my age, this is as much an expression of optimism as it is of economic theory. My heirs may not enjoy the luxury of that approach unless they are as willing to take the time to sell on eBay the way that I have. Number 3, I think. Can't see at the top here. Oh, yeah, that's funny. Voice of experience number 3, it is in your power to help the people you leave behind with a guide on what to do with your collection. Be very honest about your collection. Maybe you don't care if anyone else cares about it in the future. Maybe you spent $100,000 over the years and you may not want to reveal that to your family. but you may have salted away a real gem or two that will go a long way to recovering some of that investment. Important that your wishes be expressed in a legal way to avoid confusion at a very emotional time. Leave a plan to distribute, preserve, or sell your collection with your will. Have a person that understands the hobby as either the executor or as a resource to the executor. Have inventory for the executor containing approximate value. So all those areas we went over in the previous slides. Number 4, experience. I had to dispose of a couple of layouts because of moves. I put in brackets, they could be ham shacks. Planning is essential in the construction of a layout or ham shack. It is prudent to also plan for the disposition of the layout and ham shack. Keep a detailed notebook to annotate layout construction, notes that would help in disposition, wiring, power supplies, antenna feed cables, window adapters. A large number of photos should be taken as construction progresses. Use wood screws, deck screws, and deck screws for anything attached to walls of the room. But the only parts that were screwed and glued were pieces of the L girders and those areas essential for strength in unique sections of a layout. Remove all locomotives, rolling stock, and vehicles. Remove salvageable layout structures that would be usable for others. Gather figures and details such as telephone poles, switch stands, signs, and loose details. Number 5, make a list of a few particular items to go to relatives and friends. List items with special meaning, including some the spouse had helped construct and would keep for their memories and their intrinsic aesthetic value. Identify tools and modeling materials that have applications to other household and hobby activities. Repurposing. Identify portions of the layout or workbenches that might be reconfigured, easily moved to freestanding units. Advice to model railroad spouses, says one widow, get your husband to at least make a list of valuable items like locomotives. Get his wishes as to where he wants the stuff to go. From time to time, take you or your spouse along to a hobby shop, train fair, or an evac, or anything else. Wrap up. Get prepared for the end of your model railroading amateur radio operation stamp album, calling collections, antique radio collections, etc., etc. You or your survivors will have to dispose of your collections. Get organized, make an inventory, physically organize, take pictures, leave written instructions for the executor or for the will. Determine present value. Disassembling a layout or a ham shack may be an expense. Unattached items, the collection, may include high-value items. Consider all of the alternative approach to disposition. Understand sellers. Sell collection yourself. Okay, and again, these were the model railroad available information, and the same would be for antique radio collecting or amateur radio. There are people who deal in getting rid of collections, advise people on how to get rid of collections. And that's it. So I'm going to stop the share, stop the music. Okay, are there any immediate questions? Remember, we're going to distribute this presentation to everybody.
That's great advice, Adrian. Absolutely fantastic. And one thing I would say is it's very important to do this and think about it and do it before you get too old to do it. As those years pile up, it gets harder and harder to follow your suggestions. Another comment has to do with appraisals. Changes occur in the values of items. In telegraph collecting, which was my field before Enigmas came along, telegraph keys were going for as much as $20,000 a piece
Wow.
until Vince died. And Vince was a collector K5 VT who bought every telegraph key at Dayton, literally just vacuumed them all up. And when he died, he had 10,000 telegraph keys in his estate. And there was a little hassle about that, but within a year or so, all 10,000 keys went on eBay. And the values of very rare keys went down precipitously because Vince had 3 or 4 versions of them. Keys that people thought they'd never see again showed up in 3 and 4s in Vince's estate. So there can be very dramatic swings in the values of items within a given field. It has taken about 20 years for telegraph prices to come back up again.
Thank you very much.
That was terrific, Adrian.
Okay, my pleasure. And
Anyone have
I
any other
gotta
questions?
tell you, if my voice sounded funny, I've been sick for a few days, and today I had to suffer them putting a new roof on my house, banging constantly for about 6 hours. And very big trucks coming and going. I still have a 20-yard dumpster outside in my driveway, and I can't bring my car back in until the guy picks the dumpster up. But anyway, have a new roof. All right. So any other questions, media questions? All right. So whichever way John and I feel we can distribute this presentation, if there are any questions, you can write to me. And no problem. So, okay,
Yeah, that's
thank you.
great. We appreciate it, Adrian. Yeah, I think what you could do is send me your presentation. What I'll first try to do is scroll away in our files directory on groups.io, which has read access for everybody. And I can post and share it that way. If that somehow doesn't work, we can do it the old-fashioned way and do the blast distribution to everybody over email. But I think it's nicer people don't have to scroll away. And I think also if you read it from groups.io, I think you can also save it locally. So if you want your own local copy, you can. So we'll probably go that route. So stay tuned, everybody, because there'll be some form of announcement, either with or without the attachment.
Question. Could he provide us with some examples of things that really did go badly, either because of crooked buyers or just what else can go wrong?
I actually don't have that kind of information written. I think Tom could tell you more about that. He just mentioned one. It took 5 years to dissipate something that everybody thought cost more than the earth, and now they're dime a dozen as it was. So the answer is I don't have, other than the examples 1 to 5 that I showed, I don't have any other good information on what went wrong yesterday with somebody's collection of tin toy hats or something.
Thank you.
By the way, probably a somewhat notable point is I don't believe NEVIC is a 503 qualified club. So in effect, if you donate, it's simply donating to benefit club, but you won't get any tax benefit on your own. I believe that's how that would really work in reality, in case anyone thought, hey, is this club tax deductible? Well, I guess not really. You're just doing it for the survival of the club.
I would say a lot of things can go wrong if you try and do eBay and are not pretty much an expert at it. There are a lot of scammers out there who will take tremendous advantage of you. And for that reason, you might want to consider other techniques of selling than eBay. Auctions, for the most part, are good, although I've had a lot of experience with auction houses, and it is not unknown for them to siphon off a few of the very best items, and they don't appear in the sale, or they go to a confederate at a very low price. So things like that happen, Brad, but it's I think the thing that is most important is to be familiar with the way you're selling it. Don't try and sell on eBay if you're not a pro.
The other trick,
Yeah.
especially with some of the larger items like radios, is packing securely to get it to the new owner. You know, the telegraph key is a little more manageable, but you know, anyone who might have saved it up, Bruce Phillips wrote an excellent treatise on how to pack a radio before sending it, and it's the guide. I'm sure Greg actually has less experience there as well, but you know, that's a headache for all of us if we want to try to sell on eBay, is trying to get that shipped safely and get there without damage, and then having the purchaser going back to you when you've essentially given it away for free.
Yeah, I remember that the packing and shipping cost is a constant. Selling on eBay isn't, because you don't know what you're going to get. So when you finally get that bid in and you agree to send it, you suddenly find you're going to have to spend $200 to pack this thing.
Right.
So, and Tom is, you know, kind of mentioned that before. So yeah, there are a lot of you know, curves and bends in this thing, but I thought this presentation at least give you all a basis. I look on the screen, I don't see any kids on the screen, including you, Niels.
True enough.
Yeah, so we all are in that area of having to look at what we've got. You know, I just turned 81, and next year, please God, I'll be 82. But but I'm already getting tired. And in fact, I'm backing off going to different ham fairs and a few other things, and I've kind of dropped out of my synagogue brotherhood and a few other things. I just can't find the energy anymore. You know. So okay, thank you all.
Well, super.
you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. That was nicely done and a big help for all of us, especially something we can use going forward. So we'll make sure that's available for everybody to reference, even if it's 5 years from now, to go back to Group Sito and say, what did he say?
All right.
Plus, also the recording will go to YouTube. So if you want to hear the verbal exchange, you have it another way. But which I will, of course, announce when that's recording is available. So then maybe, assuming there's no other questions to pose to Adrian, we will go to the next part. Is maybe now it's sort of an open forum for anyone just to show and tell what they might have recently acquired or are looking for, or perhaps have a problem to solve. And I know that hair sort of falls into that part. So
Right. I would like, when you get to that part, that's what I would like to be able to do.
all right, well, Per, then without further ado, let me hand it off to you and tell us about your situation.
Okay. Well, several years ago, I discovered that there was no voltage on the plate circuit of the RF amplifier tube in this 4-tube plus rectifier radio. So I let it aside because once I measured that electricity was getting into the transformer, the plate coil of the transformer, the supply end, but not coming out at the plate end, I figured, okay, the situation was kind of hopeless. Well, attaching a wire to the screen grid of the following tube, here, I'm not sure if you can see this part of the thing. I put an arrow showing where the coil is. Putting a wire onto the grid cap of the pentagrid converter, the thing works, but it's terribly weak and it's prone to receiving noise because it doesn't have hardly any tuned circuits at all ahead of the converter. So I was reading a radio physics course by Alfred Girardi the other day, and copyright 1933. And there I saw some diagrams about maybe I could take apart this transformer and see what was inside of it. So in fact, I was able to successfully do that. And here, just for reference, is a picture of what the chassis looks like from the front.
Mhm.
And more to the point is here, possibly you can see the windings of the RF transformer. And the lowest one of those windings is the one where it's no longer connected. I was able to determine that the connection between the wire going over to the plate and the exterior side of that coil was good. I scraped the exterior side a little bit and got that. However, I'm at a loss to figure out, is there any way that I can manage to reach the bottom end of the coil right next to the wooden dowel, which the coils are wound on. And I tried a little bit of delicate scraping, but I didn't get anywhere. So I figured, let me just find out if any of you have got any successful experience with doing that. Or any junk 1933 or RCA radio that I could cannibalize these coils from. Anybody?
I think I have one right here, just like what you're working on.
Yeah, there it is. That's the R28P, the P meaning that it's also got the 160 meter band on it, as well as the broadcast band.
This one is a General Electric, a K63, but I think GE and RC had the same model, just a different.
Certainly
model.
looks like it. The placement of the knobs looks just right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I didn't have that issue that you're having with the coil on mine. I know there's a bunch of crumbling wire in them that you have to deal with. They use that rubber coated wiring in those, but and that may be part of what the problem is too. Maybe some of the insulation came off and it's shorting out someplace.
No, I looked carefully to try to see if that was the problem, but
Oh.
no, it was not. A couple of the grid wires, the green stuff is in little pieces, practically falling off, but all of the rest of the wiring is okay.
Mm-hmm. Did you ohm out the coil? Did you take an ohm meter across the pins and see if you have any open windings?
Well, I know that from its two leads, it's open circuited. And I know that, as I
Okay.
said, from
Yeah.
from the adjacent lead at the wire that adjacent part of the coil of the wire that goes to the plate, I get a connection
Mhm.
there.
Sure.
But as I said, I was hesitant to use brute force and end up with nothing. So I figured I'd
Mhm.
ask if anybody has had any experience getting at the, that sort of a coil at the bottom end of it.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming that
unfortunately,
with luck,
Wanted to rewind it.
it's the connection of the lead at the bottom to the coil rather than being
Mhm.
broken somewhere in the middle of the coil. The coil does not look burned up at all.
Carol, why not just remove the coil assembly and check it out? The whole
Well,
package there.
I don't know
It
how
would
I
seem to
would get
be-
it to come off of the of the dowel.
Well,
Um,
I'm assuming, I just quickly saw your picture. And it looks like there was a can on top of it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was, at
bring it
first I
down a
didn't,
little bit.
at
bring it
first I
down a
didn't
little.
realize that I could get the can off, but it was only
Right, now,
a few days ago that I did that.
I know it's not Bakelite, but that Bakelite piece, there are two connections to it. It's hard to see, or is that a multi-tap coil?
Uh, it's the other part of the coil, the output side has got an extra tap because of to get the 160 meter band. So
Oh,
there
okay,
are three connections to the coil that goes over to the grid of the converter. Only, but the plate grid from the RF amplifier just has one. It has only two terminals.
my thought would be if you unsoldered the leads, obviously marking them carefully, and however mechanically the coil is held in place, it would be a lot easier to do the type of thing you're trying to do if it's by itself on a bench.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Trying to, boy, I tell you, you're pretty good trying to do the logistics and circus work necessary to do it in situ.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, I guess I should see if it's practical for me to loosen up the dowel on its plastic base, and as you said, mark the leads carefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or just
okay.
take a photograph like you did. So,
Yeah.
so there are three connections then, top, bottom, and tap somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, so there are a total of 5 connections that stick out the bottom of the
Mhm.
of the base, that
Right.
the plastic.
Oh, what are the other two ticklers?
Well, 3 of the connections are for the secondary of the coil and,
Yeah.
and of the transformer, and 2 are for the primary, which is the
Okay.
side that I need to deal with. But to get
Okay.
the thing off, I would have to unsolder all 5
5 leads.
of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But then you got it there to look at and work on.
exactly.
What if you,
Exactly what you're saying. I think you're better off to unsolder it and take it out altogether so you can see what you're dealing with and you can measure it a little easier and possibly see if there's a loose connection or a break in the winding.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that advice.
Looking to hear it next week.
No, it's
Next
great.
week might be next week might be next year. You never know.
Could be.
I just decided to switch gears, and now I'm working on a true tone that has 11 tubes instead of
Oh,
this
boy.
little thing with 5 tubes. So
what if you tacked in a,
all I need for the true tone is a nice console cabinet.
Oh, well, thank you.
In fact, a question. I was given this true tone to try to do something with by an electronics student of mine 30 years ago, but he had the cabinet which he was wanting to refinish, and he had the chassis, but he didn't have the speaker, which included the output transformer.
oh,
So I sort of jerry-rigged a few things, but if anybody happens to have in your collection a 12-inch speaker with a push-pull output transformer on it, I would be happy to find out about that.
Perry, you might want to throw out a message at groups.io to see if you can extend your field of reach. See if anyone else
Okay.
who's not on this call.
I can do that, right.
Or the other thing you might do, if you get the coil out and you just can't do it, I've had very good luck finding stuff like that in the wanted section of Antique Radio Forum.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah, it turns out that, someone in Wyoming has 3 of them sitting in their garage as parts units or, so I've been surprised what I've been able to find. People are very helpful.
okay, that's a good thought. I hadn't really considered doing that,
What if
but I
you,
will.
what if you replace the open winding with an RF choke? One end going to the plate of the,
Talk a little louder, please.
yeah, I'm sorry. What, if you have say a 2.5 millihenry RF choke around and you soldered one end of that to the plate circuit and the other end fed to the B plus, and then capacitively couple the top of that RF choke over to the grid side of the secondary, just to get signal through there.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but it's what I try.
Well, it's a very practical idea. And if it at least gives enough selectivity so that and amplification so that the thing works better than it does now, that would be nice.
Well, it's worth a shot.
I'm not looking for
Put it on eBay.
perfection. I'm not looking for perfection, but to be able to hear 740 AM radio where the old music is, I need a little more amplification than what I've got from this right now.
Great. Did anyone else have anything like to share? Have anything going
I've
on?
got a question I'd like to ask the group. Okay, I'm a rookie at this, so go easy on me. All right, it's my first time. I pulled the trigger on a RB power supply. Don't ask me why I just did. I've kind of been wanting to actually build one, but because of the influx of other people's radios that are broken and they come to me and get them working, if I get, say, a $3 or I get something early like a farm set or whatever, I was going to build a power supply. I just didn't have the time resources to do that. So my taxes are done. We actually got a small refund, and the boss let me go ahead and pull the trigger on this. Now, that being said, I just pulled it out of the box today, although I've had it for a week. I just haven't had time to play with it. So today I pulled it out and I connected it up to a farm radio that I had sitting around. I have a 3970 Philco. Like any other farm set, it's a 4-tuber. I think it's A. The A is 1.5 volts and the B is 90. There's no C voltage. And I connected it up and I tried it. One thing I noticed about the RB is that the A side has like a little pot on it that you can adjust on the top, and it'll vary from, I think, 1.5 volts to 7.5 or 9 volts. So you have to play around with that. So I did that. I put it on my meter. Got it connected to the radio. I tried it, and about 2/3 of the band has a severe hum. And when I get up over 1,300 kilocycles, it gets to be pretty squirrely. If anybody ever, I'm still trying to troubleshoot this. I had to stop because my wife came home from work and I had to make dinner and do things. But has anybody ever experienced like any AC that's kind of leaking through the thing? I know that they use Zeners to lock in the output voltages, which kind of was one of the things that impressed me enough to buy the thing and pay the amount of money they want for it. But first of all, does anybody ever have? Do they have one of these that they use for the radios?
Yeah,
we use them down at the museum with good luck. I mean, we had no problem with them.
Okay.
Did you look to see if there is some AC on the output?
Well, not yet. That's why I was just asking the question. I guess I may have to scope it or something because
Yeah,
it's just
I
really
tried
weird.
that.
So again, I haven't played with it enough, but I figured, I've heard nothing but good things about them. In the New Jersey Club, we have an AK-20 in the museum that's been there for many years, and Arby runs that. And that, from my understanding, has been flawless. So that was another reason why I went ahead and got that. So, all right, I'll have to put on my detective hat and play around with it a little more. But thank you for listening.
Was the radio grounded? Yeah, the ground terminal on the radio connected to it?
Yeah, initially I tried it without the ground because I basically took a bunch of batteries and powered the radio up several months ago, and it was not an issue. But I did try grounding the radio. I even went as far as throwing tube shields around the tubes in the chassis. There's one tube that's already shielded, but I tried shielding the other three, and it was not good. So I have to, like I said, put on my detective hat and keep playing.
Yeah, it might have been some interference created in wherever you were trying to run the radio.
Yeah, my house has got aluminum siding and I live in a Faraday cage, so it's kind of easy for me to just go around and look, with a transistor radio for any noise or any of that kind of stuff. But that was not the case because I tried the radio in my shop. I also tried it upstairs in the house, and it just in two totally different areas and got the same result. And I grounded the radio both times, so I don't know what's going on. But I have a feeling it's just something weird going on with the radio. I mean, I can't throw out the radio because, once I get below, well, in this area it's WABC, which is 770 kilocycles. Anything below that is fine. It's when I go above that and it gets progressively worse as I go down the dial.
Jay,
And it's just I like the radio because it just looks nice, and it's a 4-tube radio. It's far from being a DX machine, and I think a lot of collectors kind of poo-poo it because of the fact that they're not great reception radios. You're not going to DX the hell out of it. So, but I just like the looks of the radio and the fact that it's still a piece of history, and I'm trying to keep it around.
if you took, did I hear you say you had a little pocket transistor radio?
Oh, I'm about 10 feet away from about 30 transistor radios I could pull out and.
Very good. I'm wondering if you tune the receiver, the troublesome receiver, up to the point where you start hearing that noise, and then using the transistor radio as a pickup to see if you're getting any sort of internal oscillation in there that is taking off above, like you said, above 770. And use that radio.
Yeah, that's something else I could try too, I suppose. That's a good idea. All right, thanks, guys. I don't want to bore you to death with my.
Oh, no, it's quite right, Bob. This is
My
a good
stuff.
point to ask these questions. It's
Because I'm really not a 3-dialer kind of guy in any way, but I know that sooner or later someone's going to bring me one to work on, and I gotta, break down and fix it because my wheelhouse is stuff from 30s, 40s on up.
It's a
sure.
good point, Brad. The little AM radio acts as a great signal tracer. I was having a lot of noise in an HF ham rig, and I waved a little transistor radio around and found that the switching power supply was putting out terrible noise. I hadn't realized that.
It's even a question on the extra test, the multiple guest test, which is what do you do if you're trying to isolate a noise? That's one of the questions. What do you do? Well, transistor radio is perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, and by the way, it was kind of funny too when you brought up the Titanic. Half of us at least are radio amateurs. The Ark was made by amateurs, and the professionals built the Titanic. That's just something to remember.
That's right. That's right. Good point. Does
And
anyone else have
that's on my to-do list because I'm only a general, but I do want to take my extra exam sometime. if for no other reason, just for the bandwidth.
That's great. Anyone else have anything they want to share or ask or whatever?
Oh, I guess
All
not.
right. You know,
I got a quick one.
Sure.
I wish I knew the model number and all the specifications, but I was at a flea market over this past weekend and there was a battery eliminator, probably about a 1 foot wide and 6 or 8 inches tall and about 8 inches deep. And it had, wing nuts for connectors for hooking things up to it. And it had a missing fuse holder and no fuse, or, the actual holder itself. It had that sort of, hammer tone gray kind of look to it. And it looked pretty cool. And I was somewhat interested in it until the person selling it said they wanted $50 for it. And it's like, it seemed like an awful lot to pay for something that didn't even have a fuse. So I didn't even know if it worked. And I didn't even know if I'd have to, do work on it, on the internals of it. But, what's the value of a good, it actually said on it, like I said, I can't remember the name and the model number, but it specifically had on some of its signage on the box itself that it was a, low ripple, low noise battery eliminator type thing, which, is good for farm sets, but it's also good for working on 12-volt car radios and powering up your dashboard lights of your headboard and other things.
Love it.
But not for $50. I was hoping to pick it up for like, 15 or 20 maybe. But just, I don't know much about battery eliminators, and I would think some people on this call know more about them than I do. So what's the going rate for such a thing?
Probably not too much more for what you're saying. It sounds like to me, unless it's a high current one, then it's gonna, get a little pricey depending on, what kind of current it can supply.
Yeah, this was like a 10 amp.
It's probably about a $30, $40 bill at the most.
And that's with fuse.
Yes.
Well, I paid $5 for an Atwater Kent Model 40 power supply, part of it with an 80 tube at the end, and ability to get several DC high voltages off it. And so that would take care of the high voltage end of any radio that I wanted to attach it to, and I would just have to find a way of getting 6 volts or 2.5 volts or 1.5 volts for the filaments of whatever I was working on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there weren't a lot of people fighting over this thing, so obviously I passed on it, but it'll probably be there every single weekend from this day forward. And eventually I'll just get around to telling the guy, look, nobody else here wants this except me, and you're way out of line with your price, and we'll see what happens.
Yes.
That's right. Negotiate downward.
Yeah.
Hey, I think the Antique Wireless Association had a printed circuit board, a bare circuit board for $20 or thereabouts. You could actually build one.
Good to know.
There you go. It's another option too.
Yeah, well, building my own was definitely always an option, but it was just, there it was cool, it was original, it was in the gray box, and, had little meters on it, and it was nice, but it wasn't $50 nice, especially since there was no way of even knowing anything was coming out of it.
Right.
Take a close look at the seller, and if he's chewing on a wet cigar and he's wearing an unusual hat, and then he tells you that it was bought brand new by the original owner, walk away.
Yep.
No credit, no problem.
Yes.
I think that his sign said, "Honest Bob's Very Used Electronics."
There you go.
That's right. Right.
You could also give a good sniff, and if it's a selenium
Yep.
rectifier, you'll know immediately. if
Right,
it's
exactly. Exactly.
the sniff test, the infamous
There you
sniff
go.
test.
None of the, I gave it the sight test, which was, none of the
Burnt marks.
paint on the outside of the case had been melted off from the inside. So
Well, that's something. Or was it freshly painted?
no, it wasn't freshly painted.
Yeah, those are old Shive paint jobs.
I had a car painted by Earl Scheib once. I know exactly what it looks like. It was ugly. That thing, they painted over all the emblems on the car, the bumper, the part of the window glass, and then what do you want for $100? This was back in 1976.
$100.
right,
It's
that's
supposed to
big.
be $39.95 for Earl Scheib.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, but
I
think
paid,
that was
I paid
that was the rate
$30.
of inflation, though. It just I started bringing up the price of paint and labor.
I used to get some of my older cars painted at Mako way back in the day. And basically, if you did all the body work and if you stripped the car down to nothing, so there was no chrome or stainless or bumpers or glass or anything, and brought it to them, they knew how to put the paint on well. They didn't know how to mask a vehicle. So, you bring something in and say, please try not to hit the glass, try not to hit the tires, but hit everything else. And then they'd still get some overspray on the glass and the tires, but they'd get the paint everywhere else.
Well,
Back in the day,
I spent
we had Makos
$30.
here.
I spent
They were pretty
$30
good.
to paint my 35 Hudson in 1970. And there are still some remnants of that paint on the car today.
Wow, that's a vintage cheap paint job. That might be
That's
worth
right.
something there, Per.
The
It
Hudson was
lasted
a
pretty
heck of a
well
car,
until about
too.
5 years ago. The doors started to blister. So I figured, okay, little by little, I will use a pre-val. You know what a pre-val is? It's a compressed air cylinder that you screw onto a special bottle that you fill with your paint.
Yep.
And so I've resprayed about 30% of the car with the pre-val, with the same, I got the same color paint. Nowadays, you can bring something to a paint shop and they use an electric eye on it and produce exactly the color of what you bring them as the sample.
You must have a really strong index finger by now.
Pardon? Yeah, right.
There's a lot of metal on that.
They also make a trigger that'll push down the button for you. That's like a handle that you can squeeze, so you don't have to do the index finger thing.
But then your wrist gets really strong then. That's the alternative.
Yep.
But so anyone else have anything to bring up? Because I'm looking at it's 8:36, and it's probably pointless to jump into any photo sharing. So before we do wrap up, I noticed that President Bob joined a bit late. So I don't know, Bob, if you had any announcements you wanted to make or anything, since I didn't get a chance to catch you at the early part of the meeting.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yes.
No, I don't really have any announcements. Just let you know, I've been talking to the folks at Castleton about the agreement for the next couple of years. I've had some correspondence with former President Larry about that, so we're working on that. It's taken a little bit longer than I had suspected, but we're making some progress and we're getting there. And I suspect, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have that wrapped up and can plan for our electronics expo for next year.
Oh, that's great. That's great news, Bob. Nothing else then?
Yeah, just everybody look out for the Raven links. Will be out in about a week.
Cool. So some reading material lies ahead.
Matter of fact, for those that are on nebitgroups.io, if you know where to look for it, it's already there.
Yeah, actually, I noticed. I said, I got to go look. Haven't looked yet, but I will.
So that's it. That's an insider's advantage.
It's right, hot off the press.
Yeah.
But so anyone else have anything to bring up or anything?
Well, let's see. This is something that
Oh,
8 CD set for $4 at Brad's book sale. So I highly
Gene
recommend
Shepherd.
going to the book sale.
Oh, that's awesome.
Gene Shepherd. Well, that's classic. Nice. Hey, by the way, actually, Tom, I meant to ask you on your telegraph key you showed earlier, where did you manage to find it?
Some guy came to me with my website. People see it's the only telegraph museum on the internet, and he just showed up with that, and it's just mind-boggling.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I met Gene about 45, 50 years ago.
Oh,
As
great.
He actually lived in Huntingdon, Long Island for a bit, and then he moved back to Jamaica. Yeah, he was a real character. My God.
K2ORS, and every one of us that listened to him for hours and hours
Yeah,
and
right.
hours
It's it.
thought he was speaking just directly to us. He's amazing.
Yeah. You're right.
ORS paid me a visit last Thursday.
God.
The present K2ORS.
Oh, my goodness. Huh.
We're getting a little worried there, Larry.
He gave me a Central Electronics 100V that I've
Whoa.
always after.
Yeah.
Well then, I guess maybe it's time to let you gentlemen enjoy the rest of your evening. And I understand the weather's gonna be pretty nice, so try to enjoy it. And looking forward to talking to you hopefully in 2 weeks. So until then, stay safe, enjoy the weather, get your taxes done. You haven't done it yet. And well, if not, we'll see you over groups.io in a couple of weeks. So thanks,
right.
everybody. Guys, thanks
Okay.
again very much, Adrian. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate for your sharing your
Pleasure.
knowledge.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Great, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Pleasure.
Take care, John.
I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
That's great. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Take care.
7-3.